There seems to be a tug of war at the moment. Spurs and Manchester United are fighting to sign Brentford star Bryan Mbeumo. The Thomas Frank to-do list. Harry Redknapp has come out and said, don't take any notice of what the players say about previous managers. Details of all of Tottenham's pre-season friendlies. And there are a lot of clubs at the moment, according to reports, interested in Ange Postecoglou. Clubs from the Premier League, the Saudi Pro League and the Bundesliga. Hi everyone, hope you're well. Chris Cowlin here. This is another edition of Tottenham News where I'll be going through all of the latest Spurs news, rumours and reports. If you're watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. So let's start by talking about some official news released by Tottenham Hotspur Football Club on Friday concerning the men's first team playing a couple of friendlies during July for pre-season. The club have stated our men's first team will face Newcastle United in Korea this summer as part of the 2025 Kupang Play Series. We previously announced that we will be visiting Korea during our pre-season tour of Asia, where we will participate in the Kupang Play Series for a third time. We will be playing the Magpies at the Seoul World Cup Stadium on Sunday, the 3rd of August, with the kickoff time 12 noon UK, 8 p.m. local time. The club have also announced that the men's first team will be facing Luton Town in a pre-season match at Kenilworth Road on Saturday, the 26th of July. Kickoff time will be 3 p.m. The club have stated that ticket details for this fixture will follow in due course. The match will provide our new head coach Thomas Frank with a further opportunity to prepare his side for the new season, along with pre-season fixtures against Arsenal, Newcastle and Bayern Munich already announced, and the UEFA Super Cup against PSG in August. Tottenham Hotspur star Archie Gray was on matchday international duty for the England under-21s on Thursday. Gray started as England kicked off the defence of the UEFA under-21s championship title with a 3-1 win against Czechia in Slovakia on Thursday evening. The versatile defender stroke midfielder lined up at right back in Lee Carsley's 4-3-3 system and completed a full shift at the DAC Arena. Goals from Elliott, Rowe and Cresswell saw the young Lions home. Germany toppled Slovenia 3-0 in the other match in Group B. England take on Slovenia on Sunday, 5 p.m. kickoff. Next up for our players in the tournament, Wilson Odobert and Matisse tells France to take on Georgia in Group C on Saturday, 8 p.m. UK time kickoff. They drew their opener with Portugal. Mikey Moore and Reece Alexander-Russell Denny are part of the England squad set to kick off their UEFA Under-19 Championship campaign in Romania on Saturday. The players will be preparing as England have their opening game against Norway on Saturday, 3 p.m. kickoff. The Young Lions then face Germany on Tuesday, 6 p.m. kickoff UK time, and finally the Netherlands Friday week on the 20th of June, 6 p.m. kickoff. There are 8 teams in the final tournament, and the two top teams from 2 groups of 4 progress to the semi-finals. Now, there have been a lot of reports published about Heung-min Son's future. Of course, he has 12 months left on his contract at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. The Football Insider have just stated that Heung-min Son's Tottenham future could be decided early on in this transfer window following the arrival of Thomas Frank as the new Tottenham Hotspur boss. Growing interest from the Saudi Pro League clubs has emerged as the winger enters into the final year of his contract, and a lucrative offer could see Spurs cash in. Other reports, particularly those in Asia, are stating that Spurs could accept a bid of around £50 million for Heung-min Son this summer. Former Spurs boss Harry Redknapp has been talking about the current Tottenham Hotspur squad, sending messages of support and thanks to former Tottenham Hotspur boss Ange Postecoglou, who was sacked following a Europa League victory and Spurs finishing 17th in the Premier League with 22 defeats, Redknapp said, "That is football, that is what footballers do. Oh, we love the previous manager. Well, why didn't you try a bit harder? You might not have finished fourth from bottom." It's the same old message. The king is dead, long live the king. That is football. They all come out and say that the manager was great, and then the new manager comes in and he is great. When he goes, they're sorry to see him go. That is football. You mustn't take notice of anything that they say. Sky Sports have published an article stating what Thomas Frank has to do now that he has been confirmed as the new boss. It states here, Thomas Frank's Tottenham in-tray, new Spurs head coach, must win over players after Postecoglou sacking. It is clear that the Spurs squad are not best pleased about Ange Postecoglou's sacking despite him guiding them to Europa League glory. There have been plenty of pleasant farewell messages, including Captain Heung-min Son and James Maddison, while Mickey van der Ven admitted the Australians' dismissal was strange. It means that Thomas Frank has a job on his hands to quickly win over the players who feel Postecoglou should still be leading them, but he will back his man management skills. It then goes on to say UEFA Super League glory can kickstart his time at Tottenham. One way he can convince not only the players but the fans that he is the right appointment is by winning silverware in his first competitive game in charge. Of course, that is the Super Cup final in Italy on the 13th of August against PSG. The report also states that Thomas Frank will need to sort the futures of Captain Heung-min Son and defender Christian Romero. Captain Son recently admitted his Tottenham future is uncertain this summer. The 32-year-old has 1 year left on his deal, and Sky understand that the club will give Son the final say if they receive a suitable offer amid interest from the Saudi Pro League. It then goes on to say about Christian Romero's future. He had an excellent relationship with Ange Postecoglou. If the Argentina international's Postecoglou farewell message appeared to aim a dig at Tottenham hierarchy, posting from day one, you paved the way despite the many obstacles that always existed and will always exist. With Atletico Madrid interested in the 27-year-old, Frank will need to gauge whether Christian Romero will be all in on his project. If not, then they could get a sizable transfer fee for Romero, generating more funds for summer spending. Another job on Thomas Frank's list is improve the squad and add more experience. In his final press conference, Ange Postecoglou urged the club to sign more experienced players ahead of next season's Champions League campaign. This need will only be heightened if the likes of Heung-min Son and 32-year-old Ben Davies are let go, with the latter linked to a move to Wrexham. Teenagers Gray and Lucas Bergvall will be playing in the Champions League for the first time, and they will need experience around them if Frank is going to get Spurs performing strongly in Europe's top-tier competition. And of course, they go on to talk about Spurs being linked to Brentford star Bryan Mbeumo. Another job on the list, and this is pretty long, this list, working within Tottenham's structure and leaning on Lange. Even if Thomas Frank has targets in mind, it is ultimately Spurs as a club that decide who they sign, so he will have to work within the club's structure. Chairman Daniel Levy and Technical Director Johan Lange call the recruitment shots, with the returning Fabio Paratici also having a say. It then goes on to say, eliminate injury issues. A major issue under Ange Postecoglou was injuries, and Sky have also then gone on to say concerns over the squad's injuries and their record over the last 2 years were one of the reasons for Postecoglou's dismissal. Thomas Frank will need to examine why this occurred and how they go about fixing it. And the final one on this list is fix set pieces. Spurs had an awful record at defending set pieces under Postecoglou. In his final season at the club, Spurs conceded 13 Premier League goals from dead ball scenarios. Only 3 teams had a worse record, and Spurs fans will like this stat now. Compare that to Thomas Frank's Brentford, who let in just 2 all season, by far and away the best record in the division. So Sky Sports have also reported about a possible signing of Bryan Mbeumo. They have stated that Tottenham have held initial discussions with Brentford about a deal for Mbeumo. Spurs are interested in the player, and Bournemouth's Antoine Semenyo both are players they admire. Mbeumo is understood to be more intrigued by a move to Tottenham now that Thomas Frank has become their head coach, and Spurs have received encouragement about a potential deal now that the Dane has made the switch to North London. Last week, Sky reported that Spurs had stepped up their interest in Semenyo prior to sacking Ange Postecoglou. Manchester United had a bid rejected for Mbeumo before Spurs started talks to hire Frank. And then Sky then go on to say they reported last week that Manchester United are expected to make another offer for the Cameroon star. United are also interested in Semenyo too. Now, late Friday evening, Sky Germany reported that Tottenham Hotspur, under new manager Thomas Frank, will try to convince Bryan Mbeumo to make the move to Tottenham. However, Manchester United have already entered negotiations with Brentford, as Mbeumo has already given his approval. A verbal agreement with Manchester United is in place, and they remain optimistic that the transfer will go through. The deal is on. Now, a little bit more on the Mbeumo situation. The Daily Mirror have stated that Tottenham will fight Manchester United for Bryan Mbeumo and have made a £70 million bid to try and hijack his move to Old Trafford. Spurs' offer understood to be closer to Brentford's evaluation of their player, although Mbeumo is still leaning towards a United move. Thomas Frank believes he can persuade him to stay in London. Journalist Ben Jacobs has also reported about the Mbeumo situation. He has stated, although Tottenham have stepped up their interest in the player, conversations are not yet advanced. Brentford want in excess of £60 million, and Mbeumo's preferred option is still Manchester United. Spurs made aware of this, but before Thomas Frank joined Spurs. A lot will depend on whether United meet the valuation. Spurs prepared to better Manchester United's rejected £45 million plus £10 million offer if given encouragement. But Spurs also have Antoine Semenyo and Tyler Diblin on their list. Now, new Tottenham Hotspur coach Justin Cochran has taken to social media about returning to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, this time with Thomas Frank. He said, well, what can I say? Back to where I started in 2009. I'm delighted to be joining Tottenham. I can't wait to get started. The club gave me my first job, and now after 16 years of working very hard, getting qualified and making an impact wherever I've been, I'm back. Let's go. Now, there's been a number of updates concerning Tottenham and the transfer window from BBC Sport. They are stating that Spurs are still exploring whether to keep loanee Matisse Tel at the club in some capacity, either on a loan or a permanent transfer from Bayern Munich. BBC Sport have also stated there is an interest in Crystal Palace attacking midfielder Eze, who has a £68 million release clause. BBC Sport has also stated currently there is no suitors for Christian Romero. Tottenham have put a £70 million asking price on the defender's head, but currently there are no takers at that price. And BBC Sport have also stated that during this transfer window, Spurs want to add experience in the midfield area, central midfield. A report has just been published by the Daily Mail about former Tottenham Hotspur boss Ange Postecoglou. They are stating that Postecoglou is being lined up by a top Saudi Arabia side just a week after brutal Tottenham sacking. The report states that Ange Postecoglou could be set for a swift return to the dugout. According to various reports, the 59-year-old Australian was sacked by Tottenham Hotspur last week, 16 days after he led the club to their first silverware since 2008. Victory in Bilbao served as a glorious conclusion to what had been an otherwise disastrous campaign for the North London club. Reports from the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph are both stating that Postecoglou could now head to the Saudi Pro League, with Al Ahly eyeing him for their managerial role. And the reports from both newspapers are also stating that Bundesliga side RB Leipzig and several Premier League clubs are understood to be tracking Ange Postecoglou's situation. Now, my thoughts on everything in this episode. I'm going to start by talking about the report from Sky Sports, the to-do list for new boss Thomas Frank. I'm actually surprised, by the way, that we haven't heard from Thomas Frank. No video or no interview as yet. And I'm recording this early Saturday morning. So I would hope that at some point they do actually put out an interview, even if it's a short one, by Thomas Frank, saying hello to the Tottenham Hotspur fans, etc., etc. But Thomas Frank has got a huge to-do list. There is no question or doubt about that. And every single time when I've covered these stories on this channel, and it has been a lot. There have been a lot of managerial changes of late, particularly since Pochettino went out the door. 8 different managers in the dugout now since Poch left, and that's including caretaker bosses. But yeah, we always see a very similar to-do list. But of course, a manager always has such a huge to-do list when they come in, because they wouldn't be here in the first place, if everything was absolutely fine. But that report states that he could get off to a winning start in his first competitive game, PSG. That's going to be extremely difficult game. Spurs need to do a lot in the transfer window. Of course, he is going to be working again with Johan Langer. I think that is a real positive thing. Plus, I've said in a previous episode, him working also with Fabio Paratici, I believe that would be a real good mixture. And I feel like they could all bring something to the table. Thomas Frank should definitely have a big say in transfers, in my opinion. He's always improving players, but always identified top players as well. And often his players have been unsung heroes in that Brentford side. They give everything. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very, very well drilled. They know what they're doing tactically. Very tactically versatile and flexible with that as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing Spurs play under Thomas Frank, I must say, but he does have a big job list. There is a lot to do, and I wish him luck. And I'll say again, and I will probably say on every single episode for the next 2.5 months leading up to deadline day on the 1st of September. And by the way, the transfer window reopens on Monday, so not very long at all until it reopens, and then it's open for 2.5 months until the 1st of September. But the board need to back him. The club absolutely need to get behind this manager. I believe that we have got a very good squad. I feel like a couple of tweaks here and there, everyone will feel extremely positive again, and everyone will be looking forward to the new season. The Premier League fixtures will be out on Wednesday, so not long to wait there. Put in the comments section below who you think or who you would like Spurs to play on the opening weekend of the new season. But yeah, a big job for Thomas Frank to do. I wish him all of the very best. There is going to be a lot of pressure on him. Of course, Spurs have announced the pre-season fixtures. Of course, we play Arsenal in Hong Kong. We've got Luton. We've also got Newcastle in Korea. We've got the Bayern Munich friendly away at the Allianz Arena. And then, of course, we've got the Super Cup game. So there's some very, very difficult, tough games there. A lot of people will be looking at those games very, very closely. On how we play, the results, the players that he's going to use, the formations that he's going to use, etc. So a lot to look forward to, but a lot needs to happen from now until pre-season starting in terms of the transfer window. Give Thomas Frank the tools that he needs to strengthen this squad, make it, so we've got real good depth on the bench as well, and good quality for when he does need to rotate the team in different competitions. And Spurs have said in their club statement, when sacking Ange Postecoglou, we want to be fighting on all fronts. In order for us to be fighting on all fronts, we need a really good squad full of quality, depth, and most importantly, experience. And Ange Postecoglou said this in his last couple of press conferences. It is about bringing in experienced players. I said this last summer. They went down the route of signing young, talented players, and of course, experienced player Dominic Solanke, who I think has been excellent, by the way. I know quite often people criticise him for the lack of goals that he got last season, but overall, you've got to see the overall picture and what he was told to do and what job he did for Spurs, which was an excellent one, I believe. But with the amount of injuries that we had last year, that definitely needs to be looked at as well. And I believe that the club are trying to improve that situation by changing staff, changing personnel. They've done it last season, and they are continuing to do so. So as long as we continue to learn by mistakes and improve, then of course the club will move forward. But in terms of signings, Mbeumo would be a real statement signing, in my opinion. Imagine Mbeumo coming in as the first signing. We've taken Thomas Frank and Mbeumo both from Brentford. The Brentford fans would be going crazy, I would think. But I think they've probably accepted the fact that Mbeumo will be leaving the football club this summer, whether it will be for Spurs or Manchester United. We know that Manchester United will probably offer and pay more in wages than Spurs will. But Will it be more of a pull to come to Tottenham, working with former boss Thomas Frank, staying in London because, footballers love London as a city, love to be living there. And of course, the big pull should be Champions League football. It shouldn't just be about money. It should be about Champions League football, playing in the best competitions, the best club competition there is out there. Hopefully it will be a really good Champions League campaign for Spurs, because those nights at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, Champions League football, that is really, really special. And I feel like players need to be looking at those sorts of things and not just thinking about money. But let's wait and see. But Spurs definitely need to go big in the transfer window, in my opinion. Harry Redknapp coming out and saying, don't thank the manager or write all of these comments online. That's football. That's footballers these days. You should have been given more for the manager. I tend to agree with those comments, actually. A lot of players like to have these things public. You would think that, I don't know whether it would be me or not to put it out publicly, or actually send a message to the former manager and say, thanks for everything. It was great working with you, blah, blah, blah. Do they do that as well? Do they feel like they need to do it publicly as well? Is it right to do it publicly? I'm not so sure. I think everyone will have a different opinion on that. But Harry Redknapp, in terms of what I thought or agreed with, and what I think is right that he said, is that perhaps you should have tried a little bit harder in some of these games and not finished fourth from bottom, because ultimately the manager has lost his job due to the league position and losing 22 games in the Premier League. So they've got to try harder for the new manager. And like Redknapp said, the manager who left was great. And then, as soon as they come back, pre-season, they'll be interviewed and they'll be saying this manager is great as well. So it's very true, actually, what Harry Redknapp has said. He can be very upfront with his comments sometimes, but quite often very, very right. I wish Ange Postecoglou all of the very best. And for those of you that got frustrated with me continuing to back Ange Postecoglou until the end, I'm really, really glad that he has left the football club holding his head very high. And some people still don't like the fact that Ange is getting praise that he has lifted a trophy for us. Why not? He's lifted a trophy. He is rubbing shoulders with Keith Birkinshaw and the great Bill Nicholson. Those three men are the only three men that have lifted and guided Spurs to European success in our entire history. So Ange Postecoglou can be very proud of what he done at Spurs, and I have absolutely no doubt that he has a lot of interest around the world in his services, because he always wins a trophy in his second season. What a thing to have on your CV. I always win trophies in my second season. Incredible. Regardless of what you think about Postecoglou, whether you are, glass half full, half empty, whether you want to go on about the 22 defeats, or whether you want to talk about winning the Europa League. What's right and wrong? We could debate this all day long. I see, and I respect everyone's views on that. But I wish him all of the very best. I would love to see Ange Postecoglou come back to the Premier League, because I feel in some ways he still has a real point to prove. He is probably sick of people going on about those 22 league defeats, injuries, problems on the pitch, off the pitch, etc. But I'd love to see him managing the Premier League again. And I feel like that is a realistic move for him as well. And I feel like an opportunity will come up. If it's not this summer, it will certainly be during the season. If it's not during the season, perhaps it will be at the end of the season. But I definitely feel like Postecoglou will want to return to the Premier League at some point. Also interest, apparently, according to the Telegraph and the Daily Mail, interest from the Bundesliga and the Saudi Pro League. But I'd love to see Ange Postecoglou back in management as soon as possible. But full focus now. As a Tottenham fan, I don't support one individual, and I know that some people do. I remember when Jose Mourinho was our manager, we had so many more subscribers and viewers that they only followed Jose Mourinho. And of course, we've seen, with Heung-min Son, there are so many Heung-min Son fans. And when a player or a particular manager goes, these supporters then follow that player, that manager, or that individual. But I'm a Spurs fan, and my full focus is on the football club as a whole, the squad, the manager, etc. I don't support any one individual. Each to their own what people do. But as a fan of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, I want this club to move forward. We have tasted this European success, which was an absolute delight a couple of weeks ago, and I want this again for our football club, and I want to have that moment. I want to feel like I did a couple of weeks ago every single year, and I want to see that bus parade every single year, because those moments were absolutely incredible. And in order to achieve that, the manager needs full backing, and we need to go in the right direction. But like I've said before, I see this as a minor reset, not a major one, and I believe that Thomas Frank could and should be the right man to drive Tottenham Hotspur forward and continue the work that Postecoglou has set out. Anyway, earlier this morning at 7 a.m, I was actually on TalkSport talking to Natalie Sawyer and Tony Cascarino about Postecoglou leaving the football club and Thomas Frank coming in. And we also discussed the Bryan Mbeumo situation. If you are interested, this is the interview.
Let's concentrate on Tottenham, shall we? Because it's all changed there. Thomas Frank is the new head coach, and there is now talk, as you were hearing there, of Bryan Mbeumo perhaps joining him in North London too. Joining us then to look ahead to this new season of this new management, it's part of the Spurs chat pod, Chris Cowlin. Chris, good morning. How are you?
Hi, Chris.
Natalie, Tony, good morning to you.
Great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. I suppose first things first, what do you make of the fact that your club has appointed Thomas Frank?
Well, the fan base, of course, is very mixed. I can't speak for the whole fan base because, the amount of decisions that, have been made over the number of years. And, this is the 18th different manager in 24 years. So but it's been a mad couple of years under Postecoglou. Of course, it ended with success, which I'm so glad about because he said that he was going to win in his second season. But I feel like this could be a very, very sensible appointment for Spurs, a very progressive manager, as the club statement said. And I completely agree with that. I feel like Thomas Frank deserves the opportunity as well for the great work that he's done at Brentford. And I feel like it's going to be a very safe and sensible appointment for Tottenham. And I feel like Thomas Frank is going to bring that calmness to Spurs, which I feel like we desperately need.
From the outside, Chris, we all know the strengths of Thomas Frank. It's I think, year by year, improving a squad. Have many different ways of playing, by the way. They just won't play one set way and go, this is our, Ange ball or Thomas Frank ball, whatever we want to call it, Thomas ball. I've always admired him from the outside of that. Over the 7 years he's had at Brentford, he's reinvented Brentford in many different ways because they've lost personnel, big signings to other clubs, and still put together a side that can compete and improve on their league position.
Absolutely right, Tony. And I saw a stat the other day that Brentford, in the 4 years that they've been in the Premier League, have never sat in a relegation zone. Given that he has all of these players, he improves players year after year. You take these players out of the squad. The season before last, I think they had 21 injuries, 11 surgeries, Tony suspended, and they were still nowhere near the relegation zone. So he seems to get the best out of players. And as you mentioned there, tactical flexibility, which we haven't really seen from Postecoglou. Ange always said that, this is the way that we play and that's it, get used to it. We're not changing. And I feel like a lot of Spurs fans are very excited about that, that flexibility within games and, whoever you are playing. So, but I think that is absolutely key because Spurs do have a good squad. And I feel like he's going to get the best out of some of these players. I feel like he's going to give the youth an opportunity because, of course, he's managed at youth level, as have a lot of his coaches as well. So I feel like there are a number of pluses. I know there are a lot of people still angry and upset that Postecoglou has gone out the door having delivered European success, but this is the time now we need to get behind the manager because I don't feel like we are far away. In the next 2.5 months, we've got a transfer window. And I feel like Thomas Frank needs to be heavily a part of those decisions of the players coming in because, Brentford identified a number of really good players. And as you mentioned, players go out the door. They seem to replace these players with, good quality players and very hard-working players. Brentford players are often unsung heroes. They work extremely hard for the manager.
Yeah, that is certainly the case. I mean, one thing as well, which is interesting, is before Tottenham had signed Archie Gray and Brennan Johnson, Brentford were looking to bring those two players in particular into their club. So Thomas Frank already has identified those two players as two that he wanted to work with, so that's a bonus in itself. And then there's Bryan and Mbeumo now linked with a potential move, with Thomas Frank looking to persuade him to move to North London as well. Would you welcome Mbeumo at Spurs?
Absolutely, Natalie. I'll tell you, this transfer window is going to be absolutely key for the future of this football club. You know, we've gone round in circles, gone through different managers, but I feel like a number of the managers haven't quite got what they wanted in past transfer windows, and I feel like Spurs have always been a couple of players away. But with the amount of injuries that we had last season, and with the us playing Champions League football for next season, I feel like we need real strength and quality. And Mbeumo would definitely bring that. You know, the amount of goals involvements last season for Brentford was simply incredible. And I feel like in this Spurs team, he could be a real threat, and he could be a fantastic player for us.
Which is why I think, obviously, moving alongside his head coach at Brentford would make more sense, because he knows how to work with him. Frank knows how to get the best out of him. And also, you imagine that Frank will line up in a way that would suit Bryan and Mbeumo, which I'm not sure Manchester United necessarily would line up in the same way to suit Mbeumo too.
They generally play a different formation.
Yeah,
so
that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
You're going to play to the strength.
I can't remember, and Chris might know better than me on this one, I can't remember if this happened, a player that turned down Man United to go to Spurs. It's always Spurs would be selling their players to Manchester United, moving on, and that
the game's changed.
No, I know, but that would be a massive statement. If a player goes, do you know what? I'm not going to go to one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in the country. And go to Spurs.
The thing is, Tony, I'm told now, which upsets me as a fan, that it's all about the money. You know, whoever offers the most money, that's where the footballer goes. But, you know, we've got Champions League football for next season, and I feel like Spurs really need to have that strength and depth. So a player like Mbeumo to play Champions League football, and stay in London, because that is a real pull.
Yeah.
You know, players love to be in London. So, you know, to work under the manager again, under an exciting project, because it should be an exciting project. And let's not get away from, you know, Ange Postecoglou started this project 2 years ago. And I feel like this is just a minor reset rather than a major reset for the club. So, you know, I feel like Thomas Frank can pick up, add a few real quality players, but I cannot stress that enough. Of the depth in the squad needs to be absolutely top notch, especially playing Champions League football. And let's face it as well, pre-season, you know, Thomas Frank needs to get off to a good start, because the Tottenham fan base are very hard to please. PSG in the Super Cup.
Well, I was just about to say, there's no better game, is there?
Exactly. Yeah,
I know test.
We're going to be playing Luton and Arsenal in Hong Kong, so there's some tough games there.
Yeah, there certainly is. Look, he had nearly 7 years at Brentford. You can't imagine any manager really will see. There are a few, you know, the Harrogate Town manager, whose name escapes me, Simon Weaver, is it? He's been in position for a long, long time, but there aren't many managers these days that last that sort of length of time.
No, there's not. And one thing I really like about him, and not many people have spoke about, is that he seems to be a great communicator with his owner, also likewise with his players and the staff. And I just think his reaction with the fans as well, I think he sort of brings it all together as a club.
He's a great figurehead.
Yeah, and that's, you know, you might say, well, this could be a much tougher ask with Daniel Levy, because that hasn't quite been the case, has it?
I feel like, Tony, that like I said earlier, that calmness that he can bring to Spurs, because it has been crazy, you know, this last 10 years or so, you know, particularly since 2019, that Champions League final of Pochettino going out the door. We're about to have the 8th different manager since 2019. We cannot keep going round in circles and, you know, keep appointing manager after manager after manager. You know, there are some fans very sceptical about this, because they're saying, well, what's going to change? You know, will Thomas Frank be leaving the football club in a couple of years? But I feel like this backing, you know, at board level, the club need to get behind the manager. We need some stability. But Natalie, can I ask you, as a Brentford fan, how would you feel about if we took in Mbeumo as well as Thomas Frank?
I mean, you're just adding
the black veil will be on.
Do you know what? I feel like it's like Murder on the Orient Express. Everyone has it in for me. You know, that's what it feels like. It's like et tu, Brute, et tu. That's what it feels like. Listen, we already accepted that Bryan was going to be leaving. He's had such an incredible career for us, and I think most Brentford fans will understand that he wants to move on. it feels a little bit weird that he could go to Tottenham, and to see him lining up alongside Thomas Frank will be very odd, especially when they come to town. But look, I wish him the very best of luck.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
Chris, would you be happy to take Matthew Benham instead of Daniel Levy?
Look,
It's
I'll tell you what.
It's different.
There's a shake up at board level at the moment, and I feel like there's a lot of staff changing. You know, a lot of staff going out the door, coming in the door. I feel like if the ownership is not going to change, we certainly need to do things in a different way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like I said, 18 managers in 24 years. You know, we've been very close with some managers, in particular Pochettino, of getting over that line. We've always been a couple of players short, but like I say again, I can't stress enough, Champions League football, the amount of injuries that we had last year under Postecoglou, you know, that needs to be addressed. And, you know, the club needs to learn from previous mistakes, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you go, Chris, I've noticed that medal behind you. Now, is that an original? That's not an original, can it? I mean, what?
Of course not.
I was going to say, I didn't know if someone had given it to you or something. Like,
it's just a replica. It's just a replica.
Fabulous,
but of course, the trophies have been way overdue. So I feel like every Spurs fan have taken the opportunity to go out and purchase a replica because
I love it.
At least I haven't got it around my neck this morning. But yeah, we're very
the full kit as well.
We're very proud to be the Europa League winners. So you know, don't come along every year. But you know, we want success because that trophy parade was just simply incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, Chris, we appreciate you joining us this early morning. Thank you.
Cheers, Chris.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too. So, yes, Thomas Frank confirmed as the new Spurs head coach. And could Bryan and Mbeumo follow him? It's something we'll keep a track for you here on TalkSport and on our website too, talksport.com.
Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you are watching on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like, share and comment below. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit the follow button and leave a review if you can. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe and well. Come on, you Spurs.